What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back to another episode of Poker Hands. And today we're going to be taking a look at a hand that I played from this year's one drop, probably my favorite hand that I played from the tournament. And I've been getting a lot of questions about the hand. Now, I know we talked about it a bit during one of the vlogs that I did of the one drop. If you guys want to check that out, I actually vlogged through the entire tournament that I ended up winning. But I want to go in a little bit deeper and talk about some of the stuff at play, as well as how you should be approaching the situation for both positions. All right, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into the action.
The World Series.
Yeah, and
I needed that.
I think you won either the 10K or the 25K 6-max too, which is a really prestigious event. And that's a good fold by Moore, by the way. I think that would just be too loose given the situation. He could get 3-bet by Elke or Martin or Sammartino easily, and I think it's definitely a good fold.
Merson tweeted me the other day. He's still playing poker, right? I don't know. Yeah, he's still.
He's in Maryland, I think, right?
He's on his way. He's not in Las Vegas yet. He's flying out next week.
Yeah.
I put him on Twitter probation because of something he tweeted. Yeah, I just told him the other day he's on 30-day Twitter probation, and he's an idiot. He tweets me back after that. I said, "Don't you understand Twitter probation? I'm not dealing with you." But he's on 30-day.
Yeah.
30-day?
30 days.
Okay, so he's good at the main event. Good enough. Doug Polk. Always seems to be with 5 million chips.
Now our hand kicks off at the final table of the one drop. At this point, we've already reached the money, so at minimum, you're getting 2.5, 3 buy-ins back, and there's 3.7 million up top, roughly about 34, 35 buy-ins. The action folds to Martin Jacobson, who decides to open it up with the King Jack of Spades, and the action folds around to be in the big blind with Ace 10 suited. Now, I actually think pre-flop is kind of an interesting situation. At deeper stack sizes, I would almost always 3-bet this hand. You deny equity from hands that have a bunch of equity against you. You can maybe knock even some hands like pocket deuces or threes out, which is a huge win. And then post-flop, your hand has excellent playability. And actually, the deeper you get, the better the hand even becomes. You make the nut flush when you hit a flush. Or if you get a straight, a Broadway straight, you obviously have the nut straight. So this hand plays excellent even when you get deeper, especially as you get deeper. And I like that play. Here's the problem. We're on 22 big blinds. And you can't really 3-bet small and fold to a jam. Your odds are simply going to be too good. But here's the issue. There are some serious ICM implications of 3-betting small and calling a jam. If you call and bust, you get paid last place money. And if you double up, you don't even have first place chips. In fact, I would only have around 10 million. So I'd be in about second/third place if I got a full double. So if you lose, you get the least money possible. If you win, you're not even really guaranteed that much more. So you want to make sure your 3-bet sizes are more polarized when you're on a 22 big blind stack. One last note about that, you can't really bluff too much because if your opponent thinks you're bluffing too many hands, they can just start jamming on you with anything, and then you really kind of have to have a very strong hand like 10s plus or ace king in order to make that call. Anyway, I decided to go ahead and take the conservative option, which is flat, and let's take a flop.
So not surprised by a call here from Polk. If you're going to take a strategy where you're calling loosely out of the big blind, you're going to have to call some strong hands, and this is a great candidate.
Wow, look at that top pair for Jacobson, but the nut flush draw for Polk.
Oh, Jacobson. Oh, no. Sorry, I saw a graphic. I thought he checked the flop, which would have been very surprising.
Polk check. Jacobson does bet.
Yeah. And Polk, I could see calling, I could see raising and just sort of getting it in here. It's an interesting spot, and Jacobson bets small, so he's sort of laying Polk the odds to just call and take a cheap card here. But yeah, but I think Doug also recognizes he check raises here. I don't think Martin could possibly call with something but a king or better, so. But he does elect to call.
The flop comes king 4 deuce, 2 diamonds and 1 spade. We both hit this flop pretty big, and up to now all the action has certainly been standard. I check it over to Martin, and now with king jack and around 1.5 million in the pot, you gotta bet here and get some value. I wouldn't mind mixing in a check every now and then just so you can have a top pair when you check back, but I lean towards some weaker kings like king 10 suited or maybe even king 9 suited, and the stronger your king gets, the more you need to be betting. He decides to go ahead and bet a little under 1/3 pot, and I like that play as well. This is a board where many hands have missed the flop. If I have a hand like Jack 10 or even Ace 8 without a diamond, I'm going to have to just simply let it go, and there are a lot of hands that are going to have tough spots to navigate against a small size. If he did have a weak hand like queen jack suited of just, let's say, clubs, he could bet the size as a bluff, and it would be very profitable too. So it's a nice way to balance some value bets as well as some bluffs, and it's definitely the standard play. Now over to me with the nut flush draw. I think you actually have a couple of good options here. You could certainly raise some of the time and look to jam turns or call a jam yourself, or you can look to call and play some turns. Generally speaking, when I have the nut flush draw, I usually like to play it more as a call on the flop because I do have some more showdown value. However, mixing in some of the particularly strong ones makes a lot of sense. If I had a hand like ace-5 of diamonds or ace-3 of diamonds, a gut shot and the nut flush draw, my hand's just so strong that check raising here can have a lot of upside for me, particularly if my opponent jams with a lower flush draw, or even if they do have a hand like king jack, I win on an ace, I win on my straight, I win on a flush. So I'm going to be taking some of my stronger flush draws and look to check raise those in the flop. Maybe also some hands like 5-3 of diamonds, some very strong flush draws. But in general, this stack size is kind of weird. Let's think back to what we talked about pre-flop, how, if we double, it's not great for us, but if we lose, it's terrible. Well, that's the same issue here. If we check raise a flush draw and have to call a jam, that call, even though it might make chips, it loses you dollar value. So you again have to have a more polarized approach to the way you check raise. And if you do check raise a flush draw, it's going to have to be a very strong one. You could still make the argument to check raise this hand. I think that's totally fine. But I like to have some of these in my call range to play on some later streets and maybe make a move down the line. You could also check raise some bluffs. I like a hand like 6-5 suited where you have a gutter to the nuts. I like a hand like some spades, some backdoor spades hands. I think a lot of those hands are also good bluff candidates. But hands like queen 10 of diamonds, not really as big of a fan of making a move with a hand like that. Anyway, I do decide to call on the flop, and let's take a turn.
It's a spade.
Wow, this is an action
Four
board.
outs.
Yeah.
For both.
And I think, I actually think Martin probably will check here. This is a spot where he can really hide the fact he has top pair, and it becomes better just simply because spades aren't bad outs for him. They're very good outs. And if he does check, it'll be really, really interesting to see if a spade comes, because that's a card that Doug could really try to represent, something that's like ace high with spades or 4-5 of spades or something like that. But Martin's betting.
Going the more standard route here?
Yeah. Well, I think Doug, he has shown he calls very wide out of the big blind, so Martin's probably thinking, I'm way ahead here.
The turn's a 3 of spades, which is certainly an action card. I improved to a gut shot as well as a flush draw, and then Martin Jacobson has his top pair, but now picks up his backdoor flush draw. So this card helps both of us in different ways. Here's the kind of interesting thing about this card. I think this card is more favorable for the big blind's range than it is the opener. I can absolutely call the flop with a hand like ace-5, or maybe 6-5 I didn't choose to check raise, or 4-3, or king-3, or pocket 3s, or 3-2 suited. There are a bunch of hands that I could have here that have improved to extremely strong holdings. Now, what does that mean? It means that we should work some check raises into our game if we do face a bet. But let's actually talk about Martin's decision here first with his king-jack of spades. Now, this is a bit of a precarious spot as the opener. Because yes, you can have a bunch of top pairs, and your top pairs generally have the big blind's top pairs out-kicked, but there's a full class of value bets you're just not going to have very often. Yes, he could have a hand like 6-5 suited, although I don't know how much he's going to be opening that hand on these exact stack sizes. A lot of small stacks that could be jamming over your open, and if you did open hands like that at a full table, you might start seeing people jam over your open, and the open becomes very unprofitable. So I don't know if we're going to see 6-5 suited all the time on these stacks, certainly deeper we would for sure, but in this spot, I think it's sort of unlikely. The main hand I think that the opener has always that's kind of a problem for the big blind is ace-5 suited. That hand's always opening, has great equity, great removal. It's just simply going to be a hand that a player is going to look to play if it folds to them in pretty much any position. So that's basically the only really strong hand other than sets that the opener is going to have. Now, the big blind, again, has 6-5, ace-5, all those two pairs, pocket 3s. Not to say that the opener can't have pocket 3s as well, but both players have the same amount of sets in terms of combos. Now, what should Martin do here with top pair? And frankly, I like his decision to bet. You have a hand that can get a lot of value from worse kings, other draws, pair plus straight draws, pair plus flush draws, and maybe even if I decided to get sticky with a hand like pocket 5s or 6s, where, I now have a gutter or an open ender to go along with my pre-flop pocket pair. So I like his decision to bet. But if you bet, you're going to have to call a jam. You simply cannot bet fold hands like top pair and a flush draw. And I know it isn't great. I know you're not happy about it. And a lot of players are just not going to bluff in this spot because, it's a scary situation. You can get stacked. You're at a big final table. Is this how you want to go out? But there is no option to bet and then fold. If you want to check back every now and then, I don't mind that play too. If you check back, it gives you some unlikely flushes. And also, if the big blind is a little bluffy, and I'm pretty sure this one is, you can pick off a bet in the river a bunch of the time. It's also nice to sometimes have flushes. Normally, when the turn creates a flush draw, people barrel when they turn that flush draw. So it gives you some very unlikely flushes if you check back the turn. So both plays are fine, and Martin decides to go ahead and bet.
He probably doesn't think Doug's going to play a hand like 4-3 offsuit or 3-2 suited. So this is just a fantastic board for him, and continuing to bet, I think, is definitely a smart move. I think check could be good as well.
I don't know why Max is assessing Martin's play. Martin played the perfect final table, and he had to play a better final table than Max did 2 years ago.
That's true. I mean, whatever he does,
I had a lot of Max material that day, and he went out earlier than I wanted him to. So
early.
it's just so he must have made a mistake somewhere along the way.
Did you?
I think I could have played a little better. I'm happy about my patience. Oh no, I think that was an all-in. And there's absolutely no way Martin folds here. I think he's thinking, but.
Now, this is where things get pretty interesting in the big blind. First off, I think you're absolutely going to have to fold some flush draws. And I know that sucks, and your odds here are fairly attractive to call, but you're out of position, and it's not really a good way for you to get value when you do hit. So if I have a hand like Queen 10 of diamonds, I'm just letting it go. And I know that sucks. It's not exactly how we want to play. We always want to try and realize our equity, but there's only so much that we can really do about it. Now, once I get to flush draws I want to continue with, these are going to be some of my best bluff hands. Ace 10 of diamonds I think is an especially good bluff hand because I block some ace kings, some aces, and also ace 5. These are all hands that I think my opponent would bet and then likely call a jam with. Also, my hand has a ton of equity. If I'm called and he has king jack of spades, I still have 30% equity here, so I'm not doing that badly if he does decide to call. But here's the other thing, going back to thinking about those ICM considerations, pre-flop and on the flop, that same pressure that my opponent could put on me if I raised and he went all in, I'm now putting on him. Because even if call makes him some chips, he loses a lot of money if I have it very often. It's not one chip to $1, which is an interesting concept. Tournaments are actually kind of strange like that. Every chip you win does not equal $1 like in a cash game. Sometimes you have to make plays that are to conserve chips. Here's the thing though, if you're in Martin Jacobson's shoes, you just simply have to call with your top pair. Because yes, I can have ace 5, yes, I can have 6-5 or some 2 pairs, but at the same time, if I'm trying to take a balanced approach in the big blind, I should have some hands like flush draws. I should maybe occasionally have some hands like pair plus straight draws, and take those hands and check raise them all in as a bluff. Another nice bluff hand could be a hand like pocket 5s, where I think it's now much less likely he has ace 5 or 6-5 suited. And if he does call, I have a bunch of equity. So there are a lot of good bluff candidates in the big blind that I can pick out of, maybe some other nut flush draws. Maybe a hand like, ace 6 of diamonds. Maybe a hand that flowed the flop like ace jack of spades. That could also be a more reasonable bluff hand to have too. So there are a bunch of hands I could use to bluff with. And here's the cool thing about this spot. Because of how many good hands I can have in the big blind, and because of how bad of an ICM spot puts the person betting in, it's a really great spot to get to bluff a lot. Like half of your all-ins here can be bluffs, which is a lot of combos. You're going to have a lot of ace 5. You're going to have some 6-5. You're going to have the 2 pairs and sets. So, just from like a theoretical standpoint, I think that there are a lot of great hands here to put into that range. Now, I want to talk about from a practical standpoint. I know we don't talk about exploitative play too much, but I'm going to just dive into it just for a moment. About how I feel like this spot's going to go. I don't think in this spot, if my opponent bets a king, I just don't see them going with it. Because even if they have, let's just say king, queen, or even ace, king, if I have those value bets, he's just dead. Okay, if I have ace 5 or 6-5, he's just, drawing a chop at best. And this is for his tournament life. So I think that way too many hands are going to want to bet the flop and bet the turn for value, to try and get some value from a good top pair, and then just simply cannot risk everything on the line here hoping I'm bluffing. If I am bluffing, I have a bunch of equity. If I'm not bluffing, you're completely dead and out of the tournament. So I think way too many King X hands are just going to bet the flop, bet the turn, and expect to get some value, to where as I was thinking about this on the turn, I'm thinking, man, I'm only going to get called here, I think, if he has a hand like King X of spades or a straight or a set. I think those are some of the only hands. And think about all the hands he can open pre-flop. Ace, king, king, queen, king, jack. What about aces? Is he going to call aces? That hand's also kind of weird because, you have a little more equity if I have a hand like, a set. Obviously, you can hit an ace now as well as a 5 versus ace, king. But aces and ace, king versus a straight or a set or whatever. But at the same time, you don't have that much more equity, and you're really going to put your life on the line here. So I felt from a balance perspective, it was good. I felt from like an exploitative standpoint, maybe this is a spot where you could throw in some more bluffs if you really wanted to, drop the hammer and go for it. The thing that is important though, and this is why I would fold some flush draws, you got to fold with some of your worst flush draws on the turn, or you're just not going to fold any hands, And there are some flush draws I think I'd prefer to bluff with, some hands that are more like, I don't know, let's just say like 7, 6 of diamonds where I have the gutter and less showdown. I'd probably bluff with those hands before I would bluff with a hand like ace 10 of diamonds. But again, we get to have tons of bluffs here because we simply have so many good hands, and it puts our opponent in such a tough spot. So back over to Martin Jacobson, and he's going to let his top pair flush draw go.
But Doug has been a little splashy, so it certainly is a tough spot. But I think there's just too much in there, and he does have he has outs no matter what.
Wow. Doug Polk has given so much food for thought for Martin Jacobson.
And Martin's probably kicking himself right now for not checking this turn if he's thinking of folding here, because it's really a real waste of a hand like this to now fold so much equity. And he
does fold.
Wow.
Got one through.
Did he check? No, he did not check.
But what a literal sigh he gives out.
Right? Got one through.
Hope you guys enjoyed the analysis, the breakdown of how I saw that spot. And you know what? Don't be afraid to make moves that put your opponents in tough spots. You never know what they will fold. Yeah, I don't think most players would make that fold. I think most players would call. But put the pressure on them by working in some bluffs, and you might find yourself taking down a tournament. Oh yeah, and before I go, guys, hit that subscribe button and join the Empire. I'll see you again soon. Also, if you're interested in checking out more videos like this one, you can watch the one drop as well as many other things over on PokerGo. The link is in the description.